What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the show. Gabe Yanez and I, we are joined by Izzy Silva today. Izzy is a husband. I loved hearing all the things you had to say about your relationship with your wife, which I'm excited to talk about today. You're a father, and I love the fact you had twins, and then you have an older son, because I want to hear the lessons you learned from your older son that then you're utilizing to impart with your younger children. Also a Division I wrestler. He's been a wrestling coach forever, and now he works with a variety of different athletes that are competing at the UFC level. And I think a great place I'd love to start with you, Izzy, is that I was deep diving into a variety of different pieces of content that you've been putting out, and I have a lot to chat about. But one thing that you said, and you were on a podcast with our mutual friend, Jason House, and you brought up that when you and your wife, you start off as girlfriend, boyfriend, and then when you guys decided to get married, you made two commitments. And this really stuck with me because I feel like when people get married, my wife and I, we got together at 15, and then we decided to get married later on. It's difficult, especially when you have kids, to have a ton of different rules. But when you have just like really solid commitments, and not like 50 things you're going to do, but just like one or two, it's easier to stick to them. And you and your wife said that you will A, never argue about money, and B, divorce is never an option. I'd love to just dive into that because it really hit home for me that you guys like sat down and said, dude, this is our commitment. Are you in or are you out? And let's start there, and then we'll talk about all the fun stuff, the wrestling, all of it.
No, to me, my marriage, my relationship, my kids, to me, that is the fun part. I mean, I've gotten to an age where like I want to share knowledge of different experiences that I've had, and with my wife, with my kids. So, this is kind of why I wanted to jump on the podcast, because I see what you're doing with being a father, being a husband, and just being better men. But yeah, my wife and I, the story is we were dating for 3 months and we got pregnant. And we were both in college. I was still wrestling. She was playing basketball. And, I was transferred from junior college to go to Tennessee from North Idaho. And, her mom said, hey, you can stay back. We'll help you take care of the kid. And my wife's like, no, I'm going to go with Israel. Like, we're going to do this together. So early on too, she said, I don't want to get married just because we're going to have a kid. We're going to get married because we love each other. And my mom was, married a couple times, and, we both come not from broken homes, but just not the best example of what we're doing now. But yeah, early on, I saw my mom argue all the time about finances and stuff like that. And then I told my wife, my non-negotiable was like, don't worry about us. I will always find a way to like put food on the table, have a roof over our head. I'll bust my butt. So I don't ever want to argue about money, and then her non-negotiable was, divorce is never a solution. We're going to go through hard times. We knew we were going to be faced with challenges, and, the solution will never be, oh, maybe we should separate. Maybe we need, time off, or, if we're married, maybe we need a divorce. So those two things still like ring true in our family. Like we never argue about money.
You said something that I really appreciate. I've seen some of this content come out from you, which is the way you treat your wife in front of your sons, right? And you were raised by a single mom and two sisters. What is the takeaway there for a dad who, I didn't grow up in that same environment, and I'd like to think that I treat my wife with a lot of respect, a lot of care, especially in front of my children. But I guess what would be the advice and things that you think about growing up surrounded by all women, and what you've taken in your relationship to expose your boys to in particular?
I think my relationship with my mother is like, man, I adore her. Like her success. The reason why I'm successful is because I always wanted to make her proud. I wanted to be like, man, all her sacrifices. We came from Mexico. We came from nothing, and to, where we are now, like we are blessed, beyond, what we can imagine. And, so I've always had the respect for women, and as soon as I got married, I didn't have a father, so I didn't know what to model after. So it's like, man, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that I'm the best husband and the best father. And I didn't know what that looked like, but I had some great, coach, mentors and stuff like that, were great family men. And I just kind of guided myself on what a good father looks like, what a good husband looks like. And one thing, my wife will tell you this, in 22 years that we've been married, I've never once raised my voice at her. I've never once, cursed at her. And, have there been times where I've been frustrated where, I could have 100%, but I always knew once you kind of cross that line, it's easier to go back or, it's simple. So that was kind of the main driving force of like, I never want to like raise my voice in anger to my wife. And in return, the byproduct is the boys saw how I treated their mother. They saw the respect, and now my oldest son, he's in a relationship, he's in college and, I know that he's going to be a good father because of how my wife and I modeled what a relationship looks like.
I love what you said about that line. Go ahead, Gabe.
I was just going to say it's funny and really interesting that you mentioned your relationship with your mom, Izzy, because it's kind of like a running joke in Hispanic Latino culture, like the relationship between a son and his mother. But I think it's such a valuable and important thing because it sets the standard of like how I always was taught to treat women, because the first woman that you have a relationship with is your mom. I still call my mom every single day, and we live close to each other, but like every day she gets a call from me just to say, hello, how are you? And that's always been the case. And it's just been my kind of normal. And that I'd like to think has definitely just given me an understanding from day one of my marriage of just like, this is how we treat women. And I think it's one of the really valuable things that comes out of our culture growing up in a Hispanic household.
I call my mom almost every single morning as well. I'm about a 20-minute commute to my office, and I'll use that time. And you know what? She doesn't have that same relationship with my sisters. My sisters, she's close with them, but they'll call, when they need something or, when they want to discuss something. But I'll call my mom just to chat
every day,
just about anything. And she appreciates that. And what's cool? My son and I, we're close, my oldest son, but he'll FaceTime his mom from New York almost every single day. And they'll sit and talk about nothing. Like, oh, if I need something or my son needs something from me, we text, stuff like that. But my son is calling home almost every night, and my wife loves it.
That's awesome. I want to ask, just before we move on from this particular lane, you said like once you cross that threshold, it's easier to go back. And I hadn't thought about it like that. And so I'm glad you brought that up. I'd like to think that, I never, yell, scream, whatever at my wife ever. It's just it's not part of my nature either. But I would imagine once that hurdle crosses, it's much easier to go back there. Cause I've seen that in other relationships where like, it actually becomes almost like it becomes like a thing. It just like starts happening. Yeah. It's just like, okay, well, that's the way we're going. We're both doing it,
Yeah. No, I agree 100%.
Well, how much do you think fight sports or how much do you think wrestling has helped you be able to manage that stress though? Like, how much do you think it helps that you've been on the mats since you were 7th grade and you've been able to control that anger, or not anger, that might not be the best term, or control the emotions? There you go.
I think it has a little bit, and really it's not just wrestling, it's all training. If I don't train, I get anxiety, and my wife knows that. She's like, get out of the house, go to the gym. I'm a very, very busy person. I'm on the go. And when I'm just kind of sitting at home, like my wheels are spinning, and she knows that. So she's like, all right, go get it out of your system. So, I don't think it's controlled anger or getting the anger out of me, per se. It's just respect. I think respect is the biggest thing. And I try not to lose my temper, and just react. I feel that I'm pretty calculated in my responses and my reactions. So I think that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
And I think that it's easy for people to think, well, raising your voice at your wife, like yelling, all of those things. Like, I think that that's pretty black and white, that's something that you should strive not to do, especially not in front of your kids. But one thing that I saw recently, this was maybe 2 months ago, I took my son to his gymnastics class and we were in the parking lot, and another father was holding his son while the mom was parking the car. And she was like struggling to kind of get the car in. And he just made a passing comment to his son about, mom, just never park the car. And to me, like, I just had this like knee jerk reaction of just like not liking how he said it. And the fact that he was like, talking negatively about his wife to his son. And I think that those to me are like the little example of things too that maybe people wouldn't notice have an effect, but I think they do have an effect, right? Like you're talking despairingly, even if it's like a small thing in jest about like parking a car or like this silly thing to your kids. And I think that to me, at least in the moment, was a pretty obvious, like, I never want to do that. Like, I never want to, even the things that maybe, bother me or annoy me or whatever about my spouse, which, obviously those things do exist. It's not right to air that in front of your kids or especially to your kids. And I think that that's the thing that maybe is less obvious to people, that like is a line that shouldn't be crossed. But I do think that it's a line. And I do think that it does the same thing that you were saying of like teaches your kids what's okay to say about, the person you're supposed to love more than anyone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even with my boys, all of them, as they get older, they're young kids. Once they get to like right now, 11, 12, 13, 14, they start getting a little testosterone, they're a little bit maturity, a little puberty, and I check my boys all the time. And I was like, hey, you're getting a little too comfortable with your responses to your mom. Like, do not do that. Like, you show respect. Like, it's a daily thing.
Man, I've been there.
You're checking them. Like, no, you do not speak to your mother like that. You know what I mean? So it's a daily just reminder of them. Like, this isn't how we act. This isn't how we do things. You know what I mean? We respect each other. We respect even with me, like, we work way too hard. My wife and I, the boys do all the chores at the house. We don't, obviously we're doing it when we're home, but I said, we work way too hard to bust our butt all day long and then shuttle you to all these different things and then expect to come home and clean up after you guys. You know what I mean? So you have a responsibility at home. One, academics, two, all the chores at home. And then also, number three, athletics, so they're very, very disciplined and regimented in that aspect.
Your oldest son is at West Point. Your younger two boys, how old are they?
They're 15.
They're 15. And then your daughter is younger, yeah?
She's 5.
Okay. So you got the full gamut. I mean, you're playing across all the things right now. And so I love talking to guys like you because there's so much I could learn. So my daughter is 14, my son's 11. And so there's just so much to unpack within those ages. One of the things I heard you talking about that I found to be very interesting is that unlike other parents, you have not, I mean, I'm sure there's some parents, of course, but you have like this thing where you raised your oldest son to go to West Point, and now you're able to make adjustments or changes with your two younger sons. And I'm curious, I heard you talking about being tough on your oldest son. Sometimes I worry if I'm being a little bit too tough on my son, maybe I'm not being tough enough, or in general, I think I probably gravitate towards the more tough side. I really hold him to a high standard and high regard. But sometimes I worry that, I don't know, listening to you talk about how that's really made your relationship now that your son is more of an adult that much better gave me solace, made me feel like I'm on the right path. So I'm wondering, what lessons have you learned sending one child now to arguably one of the top schools in the country, arguably at his current level, very successful, wants to be JAG. Like, what are you now taking with your twins that maybe you're doing different, or you just stay in the course?
No, I definitely made mistakes with my older son. Like, everything was result driven, not just on the mat, but just, man, every single assignment, every single test, every single quiz, like, it was all just, here's the thing. My biggest fear as a father was like, man, it's my responsibility when this kid leaves our home that he's set up for success. My biggest fear was I do not want to have adult children living in my house. I don't want to have a 25 to 30-year-old, living in my house. Like, it's okay for some people, but I didn't want that. I left my house at 18, never looked back, and, I kind of made it. So I wanted to make sure that my son was set up for success, academically and physically and maturity to be able to take on the world, and all those challenges. So I was very, very hard on them. I'm very hard on the twins. I won't waver from that, but I had less of a relationship with him, like a personal relationship. It was all just like, man, I need you to do what you got to do in order to get into West Point, So now with the twins, it's more of a balance. I mean, the standards are still the same. The academic, the athletic, the social standards that we set for ourselves are still the same. but I kind of enjoy the process a little bit more with them. The daily of going to their wrestling practice, the going to the gym. Like I'm more present and enjoying it because of what I've realized is my son's gone. My oldest son's gone. Like he's going to be an adult. Like I can't take that back anymore. You know what I mean? So I'm still the same amount of toughness, but I didn't enjoy the process as much with my older one as I am now with my young ones.
That's interesting.
It's funny, Izzy. We had a guest. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Chandler Smith, who went to West Point, and he spoke a lot. It's funny because he mentioned a lot of the same things of like him growing up. It was very results driven, and it led to a lot of his success. And he went to West Point, obviously, was a wrestler, CrossFit Games, all of these things. But now he's kind of like had to find that balance and kind of take a deep breath and let go of some of that stuff. So it's just really interesting hearing that from the other side, because again, it's a lot of success. It's a lot of really positive things, but it's nice that you've kind of acknowledged that a little bit of balance there. And you just learn that through experience, right? Like it's the only way to learn it.
Yeah. And I've acknowledged my mistakes with my oldest son. Even with my younger ones in real time. Like I know when I've overreacted. I know when I've been too tough. And within 24 hours, I'll get down to their level and say, hey, I know I should have communicated it this way, or I know I handled it this way, but this is where I'm coming from. You know what I mean? So like we all kind of get on the same page instead of like, oh, I'm the boss. It's my way or the highway. Like I've acknowledged when I've made mistakes, in my relationship or with my kids.
When it comes to coaching, I think this is a unique perspective that only you have, which is, you coached at the highest level in collegiate wrestling for 15 years at Fresno?
Sir.
And
Yes.
Fresno is like legit. I mean, you're like, man, I mean, you're at the tip of the spear in a lot of in a lot of cases. I'm curious what you found from a parent's perspective. I do think wrestling in general gravitates towards parents and kids who are willing to put in the work. I mean, dude, wrestling is just a grind. And I've gotten my son into it as much as I can, but he's gravitated towards other sports. But I want him in wrestling. I just think it teaches such great discipline. But anyways, back to the D1 coaching. Is there any threads that you saw working with student athletes and their parents at the Division I level, threads that were commonalities that you think other parents can instill in their children, whether they're wrestling or not, that you think help them be successful and achieve the highest level of wrestling?
Yeah, I think in wrestling, everyone's, not everyone, but a lot of people are kind of at the level that the Division I wrestlers were, the level that my kids are at. Everyone's kind of protecting something. Once you've won at the highest level, like especially in California, everyone's scared to lose, or if you lose, people aren't going to think that you're good anymore and stuff like that. So I let my kids struggle. My kids have won national titles. They've won everything. They're in the hunt to make our USA age group world team. But it's like, I know they're going to lose. I know that they're going to struggle. Like, and even in practice, I put them with people that are bigger than them, more experienced than them. To like figure that out. And if you do figure it out in the practice room, it's going to translate to the wrestling room. So a lot of people they want to be the best in the room every single day. And that's not going to happen in real life or on the mat. So the parents, I said, let your kids struggle, let your kids, fall down and have to figure themselves out. Let them, not accomplish a goal that they've set out for themselves and see how they respond and how they kind of course correct or change different things and stuff like that. So if I had to give advice, it's like, man, just put your kids in challenging situations and let them figure it out, because more often than not, they will.
Mm.
Has there ever been, Izzy, any discussion or maybe even, I'll use the word friction between you and your wife and the level of discomfort to put your kids through? And the reason that I asked that is like we were watching,
That's a good question,
this wrestling match with Hendrickson and that upset, which I want to get into, but I was watching the highlight because I was so fired up and I was like showing my wife. And I was like, man, I would love if Shay, our son, got into wrestling. Like I never did it, but I love the sport. And, she definitely wasn't convinced. I'll put it that way, And so I wanted to ask you, has that ever been something where, mom naturally doesn't want to put, their children in something that would be challenging, they could potentially get hurt, even if deep down they know that it's important. Has that been a discussion? Have you seen that amongst parents, and kind of how would you recommend navigating that conversation?
I've definitely seen it amongst parents. My household, my wife was a Division I athlete. You know what I mean? She played basketball. She was 3-time state champ hurdler. So she gets it. She understands what it takes, to win at the highest level. So she hasn't complained about like how much work we're doing or is it too much. She understands like to be at the level that we're at, this is what it takes. What she doesn't like sometimes is our life revolves around wrestling. Every single weekend, every single day, our whole year calendar is based on what the boys' national schedule is, training plans and stuff like that. So sometimes she's like, we everything that we do is about wrestling, But at the same time, when the boys get done with the tournament, I travel with them. She travels sometimes, and she sees the success. I remind her, I was like, hey, the boys don't reach this level of success without all the sacrifices that we do every single day. So she understands the big picture. There are certain days where she's like, man, can we just not do wrestling today and just go for a little family vacation? Yeah. So, but I've definitely seen the other aspects of it where, the dad wants it, the mom's not, aligned or, but there's different levels of wrestling. There's different levels of commitment to it as well. The level that we're at, we want to be the best in the world. There's also, so many divisions, and I see it. I coach a lot of kids, and I'm like, man, there's a level of college wrestling for everybody. Whether you go D1, D2, D3, NAIA, junior college, like we can get your education paid for. Some people don't want the Division I commitment. Some people don't want, to make it all that they do. And I was like, that's fine. There's different levels for it. So, both parents do have to be on the same page, in order, because this sport is so demanding.
On that note, go ahead, Gabe.
I was just going to ask, what does that commitment look like high level? Say, D1, yeah. What level of like the year? Is it year round? Is it, what does that look like?
So, yeah, good question. So right now, people are like, oh, it's the off season. Like there is no off season. So like the high school season is from November to March, and it's pretty intense. But then you start your international styles of wrestling, and that goes from like April to middle of July, and that's a whole another season, and when you get to the Division I level, you have to wrestle freestyle Greco-Roman, that's where you make your biggest jumps and biggest gains. Everyone works hard during the season from November to March. It's what you do from April to September, October is when you're going to make your biggest gains and when you're going to have that success. So for us, it's kind of like four phases, throughout the year. We have our regular collegiate season, and then right after that, we have our international season from April to July, and then after that, you get a couple weeks off. But then, August and September, now it's like, now we're in our building stage. Let's build our body up. I had a coach tell me, you got to build your body to be a machine so it doesn't break down. Wrestling is so hard and so demanding. Like if you don't lift weights, like your body's going to break down from the grind. So August, September is like our building phase. We're building our bodies right back up. We had a long, 8-month, 9-month season of both styles. So, and then after that, we go into our preseason, September, October. You're in the preseason because you put a lot of weight on, the intensity wasn't as high in August and September. So now, August and September now, you got to get back in shape. So when it starts over in November, you're ready to hit the ground running. So there's really kind of like periodization training, 4 phases throughout the year, but it's year round. And people say, oh, your kids are going to get burnt out. It's like, they won't get burnt out. One, because they understand their why, they understand their goal and what they're working for. And also you're not working at a level 10 year round. During the, August, September, we might be on the mat 2-3 days a week, and it's going to be very low intensity, and we're kind of sharpening new skills or trying to develop new skills. So they're not getting burnt out, and then they're going to lift weights, and now their body's changing, so they're more motivated. So people get burnt out if it's not structured training, and the people don't understand that. The burnout comes from the parents just thinking that they're going to grind at a level 10 year round.
Well, on that note, Izzy, like, question for you. When did your younger sons, or when did your older son, And your younger sons, when did they start wrestling?
So my older son, we lived in Virginia. I coached at George Mason University, and he was a stud football player as a youth. Like he never really wrestled. And then we moved to California, and he was in sixth, seventh grade. And the area of California that we're at is probably one of the best areas for wrestling in the country. And it wasn't very good at football. So he didn't make the commitment to go wrestling year round, probably till ninth grade. You know what I mean? So, and then, he made a lot of ground up, and then ended up winning a state title his senior year. But he always knew he wanted to wrestle Division I, But my younger ones, we moved to Clovis, Fresno, when they were young. So they started wrestling in this freaking awesome environment in Clovis, Fresno since they were 5 years old. So the level that my twins are at versus the level that my oldest son was at the same age, they're a lot higher. Their ceiling is a lot higher in the sport.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. So, one of the things that Gabe and I talk about, and his kids are younger, I struggle with this myself for sure, which is how much, and basically how much to expose to a variety of different sports versus, and a lot of this has to do with your children and what they want, of course, right? But I'm curious for you as a parent, looking at all these Division I athletes that have came through the schools you worked at, how many of them played multiple sports, or how many of them just wrestled? And do you worry about that for your kids?
Well, it depends. For me, wrestling, I think when they're young, yeah, they play t-ball, they do those things. But to get to the level that we are chasing, you have to be specialized. The boys are next month in April, they're trying to make the U17 world team. You can't do that taking 3 months, 4 months off doing another sport. Like I mentioned, those 4 phases of the year, they all are trying to encompass, us trying to make a world team or us trying to win a, junior national title. So you can do it. And there's also like the bigger athletes, the athletes that are, 180 plus, you can play football and be very good at it or wrestle. But if you got a 101, 106 pounder, he's got no business being on a high school football field. He's going to get hurt. And unless you're a pretty good shortstop or something like that, that's why wrestling, you can specialize because all body types, big, tall, short, thick, chunky, we have a spot for all those kids.
Huh. So, okay. Yeah. But just on that last note, when you look back on your days at Fresno, how many of the Division I athletes would you say were multi-sport athletes?
I would say less than 20%.
Less than 20%. Yeah. I'd be curious what that number is in football. I imagine it's probably similar. I'm just curious because wrestling is a very specific type of sport. It requires so much technical knowledge and it's so fluid. But that's helpful. I
would say you'd probably see a higher in football because, football, you can also do track, track and field. And it's not so taxing on your body. You can still be on the track team and go play 7-on-7 in the off season.
Yeah.
So I would say, maybe the basketball players. So it'd probably be higher in other sports, because they're not as taxing on your body.
How about the NIL? When it comes to NIL, I think that's changing the game. It only got implemented a couple of years ago. What have you seen that do in wrestling? And what's your take on that? What should parents be aware of if their children are getting recruited to go play sports and whatnot? What role does NIL play? And, yeah.
So I don't know if you know, but I handle the collegiate recruiting and NIL for Iridium with Jason.
Okay. So and the NIL for people who are unfamiliar what NIL is, can you just share what the NIL is?
It's kind of name, image, and likeness. And the thought of it is, a long time ago, when the lawsuits were coming in, it kind of had to do with football and basketball. Football selling out stadiums and basketball, they're selling jerseys and stuff like that. But that's kind of where it came from, where these athletes should make some of that revenue, because they're bringing so much into the universities. But how it got trickled down to the Olympic sports, it kind of doesn't make sense, but, it's here and we have to kind of work with it. But I've seen a lot of it in the transfer portal. Guys go to colleges and it kind of sucks where, you might be at a mid-major, and coaches recruited somebody that was under the radar and they've developed them and they become All-Americans, and then now they're going to get cherry picked by some of the big five, programs where that's kind of where it sucks. And I have a lot of colleagues that are, either at big universities or at the mid majors. And I kind of see both sides of it. The bigger schools are getting pressure to win. I mean, and they have boosters that have big pockets that say, hey, bring this guy over. So, what we do, with our NIL is we got to educate these kids because they're going to take this large sum of money and they don't know that as soon as you take this money, you're in a different tax bracket. You're going to get taxed. If you're getting $200,000-$300,000, you're going to get taxed $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 as soon as you accept that money. So the athletes that we work with and say, hey, let's set up your LLC, let's set up your S corp, let's set up your business. So when you do take this money, you're not taxed as much. So I don't think I know that's not happening, at the collegiate level right now where these coaches, they're going to give them large sums of money, but then when their eligibility is done or when the year is over, these kids got a big tax bill. The coaches are not educating them. So that's what we're doing with our NIL athletes that we have at Iridium, but it's out there. It's not as prevalent in football or in basketball and stuff like that, but there's probably about, 20-25% of collegiate athletes in wrestling that are getting some kind of NIL money. There's a high school kid that just committed to Iowa and, I don't know the numbers, for sure, but I heard he's getting $5 million over 5 years, which is the highest NIL for wrestling.
Wow.
So just to clarify on when you said the big schools start cherry picking these athletes from the transfer portal, the schools are able to now pay the athletes directly in exchange for their coming to their program. Is that kind of how it's working in practice, even though that's not how it's meant to be done in principle?
Okay. And it's not, and the money doesn't come from the school. It comes from like a collective or a booster group. It's not coming directly, but actually because it was kind of the Wild Wild West for a couple of years, the rules changed now. So schools had to get opted into a shared revenue program. So now the money's not coming from outside boosters, or it's not supposed to. Now it's going to come from a shared revenue, coming from the school. So now the NIL will be a little bit less. The school will tell you, hey, you're bringing this much revenue. This is how much NIL you have to work with, So obviously the Penn States, the Iowas, the Ohio
But there's
States,
no cap on that, right? Is it because like with the boosters and stuff, there's no like quote unquote salary cap. Like if you have boosters that were dropping tens of millions, you could go spend that on athletes.
No, in the past you could. This year you can't. Now it's all based on the revenue numbers that the school's bringing in from their athletic program.
Total or per sport?
Total. But then they're gonna, now the athletic departments are tasked to like, all right, we have this piece of the pie. 80% of it's going to go to football, or 60% is going to football. X amount is going to basketball. Then the Olympic sports, they're going to get a sliver of the whole piece of the pie. So then they're going to get a budget. Hey, this is how much NIL you have to work with.
So from the NIL perspective, I know that it's a little bit controversial. I see the position of it. Like these athletes are generating revenue for the school. They should be able to get compensated because their likeness is being utilized to generate this revenue. I see that side. But then to your point, these athletes are getting brought up into a system and then they're just like leaving because there's more money. So what do you think the solution is? Do you think this percent of revenue is going to be like a good step forward, or where do you see it going in the next couple of years? And do you think that different sports should get different funding? I mean, what's the solution?
I think the solution is that football and basketball need to be a separate entity, besides the Olympic sports. I mean, the track and field, the swimming, the wrestling, like they should still stay under the traditional, umbrella of, scholarships and funding. Hey, you get a scholarship, you get X amount of stipend every month for living. Like, I think wrestling's happy with that. Other sports are just, you're getting your education paid for. That means a lot. But now, I get the quarterback for Alabama or Ohio State. Like those guys are generating millions. They should have a different, like, rules and regulations separate from the Olympic sports, because now we're tied. And even, we want to create legislative, motions, stuff like that kind of help with wrestling or the Olympic sports, but we're held up by what football and basketball are doing.
Yes. It's fascinating.
I think the NCAA doesn't know what's going on. They're reactive, like every year, new rules, new implementation, So I'm nervous for collegiate sports. You know what I mean? It's starting to become professional sports, and not really for the footballs and basketballs. I'm nervous for the Olympic sports.
Mm.
That's why I'm so happy that my son's at West Point, because NIL is not even a thing. You know what I mean? They're there. His education 100% is paid for. $500,000 education paid for, 100% scholarship. Anybody that goes to these service academies on athletics, or even as a traditional student, everything's paid for.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a really awesome way to do it, man. You should be so proud. That's so cool. I love West Point.
I was there 2 weekends ago. We got like a parent weekend, and man, the gratitude that I have, I got to go to his classes. I got to walk the halls, the tradition, the history, all the different opportunities that he has ahead of him. Like, man, I'm so grateful, that he's there and he's thriving and he loves it.
Should be super proud, man. That's awesome. But I think that, talking about, NIL and popularity of the sports, I think, good segue into Wyatt. And I want you to tell me about that match and that moment, because it's always interesting for me as an outsider, not someone that's closely following wrestling, involved in the sport. I can't open Instagram without seeing a clip of that match, a take on that match, like all of that stuff. And I feel like wrestling's having a moment because of it. Tell me a little bit about, what happened exactly? How big of a deal is it really? And what kind of impact does that have, maybe more long-term, on the popularity of the sport, or is it just kind of a moment?
No. So I'd say it's probably one of the top 2 or 3 upsets in NCAA history. To know who he beat. I don't know if you guys are familiar. Gable Steveson was a 2-time national Olympic champion. And he won the Olympics at 21 years old. So if there was a lock to win the NCAAs this year, it was Gable Steveson. Nobody was beating him. You know what I mean? So to Wyatt, watching the match, I think what happened is, Wyatt came in confident, and Gable, he's a bully. People are scared of him. And if you let him get the first couple takedowns and then the floodgates open, then it's over with. I think what happened in the match is Wyatt defended a few of Gable's early attacks, and stalemated them. And the match kind of was close, as it was dragging on, and it started not to put doubt in Gable's mind, but it's like, man, I've never been in this situation. Usually I get these takedowns right away, and like I can handle my own. So late in the match, I think there was 30 seconds left. It was 4-2, and there was still a chance. And Wyatt got to Gable's legs, and getting to Gable's legs is hard. And he doesn't have to defend that much. So he's not familiar with somebody being on his legs and having to defend. So it's like, man, I think he panicked a little bit, and Wyatt did what he did. And it's something that he's probably practiced a million times, finishing that attack. And he finished it, and he was able to ride him out. And I think Gable was stunned at the moment. But I think one of the match was those early rounds where Wyatt was making it hard for Gable to instill his will on him. And then, kind of as the match dragged on, Wyatt gave himself a chance at the end of the match. But my good friend is the head coach at Oklahoma State, David Taylor. He's an Olympic champion, and this is his first year as the head coach, and they did an amazing job. He had another athlete at 174 who did not place the year before from a different university, transferred to Oklahoma State, and went from not placing to being an NCAA champ. He had, some of his guys at Oklahoma State beat returning champions. So he's probably one of the greatest minds in wrestling. He was the pound for pound #1 wrestler in the world, from 2018 to 2023. And he's instilled that same belief that he had into his athletes. And I think that was the biggest thing with Wyatt. Like Wyatt, he's mentioned a bunch of times, it was never about, I want to beat Gable Steveson, I want to beat Gable Steveson. He trained to be the national champion. Whoever that was that he faced that night, he was going to beat, so he didn't train for a certain opponent. He just trained to be the best person he can be every single day. And when it was time to show, he did it.
On that note about mindset, you're talking about your buddy at Oklahoma State. I know like wrestling is like Oklahoma wrestling. That's what I think about. But how about for you at Fresno, for 15 years, are you in, obviously strength training is super important, and that's a whole area that we talk a lot about on the podcast. But I think in particular with wrestling, the mindset has to just be so critically important because, I train a lot of jiu-jitsu, And it's difficult because you don't know what your opponent's going to do, especially when you're competing. You have to have plan A, B, C. It's like a game of chess. And I'm sure wrestling is just like that sped up, especially if you're not in a gi, like in jiu-jitsu. I'm curious what you did in terms of like mindset or what lessons you guys try and instill. Do you have a coach there that works particularly with your athletes on that type of stuff?
No, we don't have a coach in particular, but kind of what we did is we worked on consistency. I mean, every single day, get consistent, showing up every day. And then one thing, my philosophy came from the coaches that I had is every time I stepped on the mat, I knew I was prepared. I knew that I was as strong as I can be. I knew I was in the best shape that I can be. And I knew the areas that I needed to stay in. So I was never nervous. I never stepped on the mat feeling that I was unprepared. I mean? The results were going to speak for themselves. I mean, if I get beat, I know I got beat by a better person. A better man, not by somebody that prepared more. So the confidence comes in the preparation, I believe. And that's what I instill with my boys now. Like, we're going to be consistent in our work. We're in our work ethic. We're going to, make the most out of it. We're going to have our nutrition, our recovery, our sleep. Everything is going to be so dialed in that we're going to find success, and then when you step on the mat, you're not going to have that doubt in your mind.
How hard has that been with the age of your boys now? Because, like you were saying before, testosterone, puberty comes in, like they want to, have fun, test their limits or stuff, or is the why just so clear for them that it isn't that much of a friction point and they actually thrive in the consistency? What's that been like, and what's your advice there?
I have them around, great people besides me. I mean, they understand the level of coach that I'm at. I'm working with world champions. I have them around some of the best coaches, and they went to the Olympic Training Center. They flew by themselves. They're the youngest kids invited, so they're around those people. But I think the biggest thing is we're pretty real and honest with our kids. I mean, they're going into high school next year, and I've seen it happen. I told the boys, like, hey, as kids get older, there's going to be parents where they're going to give their kids longer leashes. They're going to allow them to have more of a social life. They're going to allow them to, do different things. One, because they don't want the friction with their own kids. I was like, we're not going to do that. You're going to be home. You're going to, you might not be able to go to the football game, hang out with your buddies. But at the same time, I'm going to fly you across the country, and you're going to be around other high level people that are trying to accomplish the same thing. So we remind them of the distractions that are coming up. We remind them of the different things, the drugs, the alcohol, the girls. My son never had a girlfriend until he was at West Point, because we knew that they were a distraction, so it's educating our kids and then also remind them. And then also, there's times where my kids, like, they're not as motivated as, I want them to be. And I asked them, hey, have your goals changed? If they've changed, I'm okay, 100%. If you don't want to be a world champ anymore, if you're not trying to be a 4-time California state champ, that's fine. Just let me know, because then I will change my standards. But if your goals are still remain the same, then, hey, you're not doing your end of the bargain. I'm not going to hold you to the standard. So it's constant communication. It's never like, you're going to do this because I said so. It's we're in this together, and we have we're walking the same path next to each other. So the boys know, they understand their why, and they understand like what they're working for every day.
And, I heard you talking about just training with them and, not being this guy who says, hey, train hard, but then isn't training hard, or go cut weight, but isn't willing to, at least step in there and be a part of that. And I think that that's just so important because it earns such great credibility, especially as your boys get older. My son can say a lot of things about me, I'm sure, but he surely will never say that dad isn't down to put in the work ever. Yeah. Like, he just knows that, he could say, hey, dad's too tough on me or whatever. But one thing I do think that you said that I want to just kind of like ask a question about, which is asking the boys, like, hey, have your goals changed? I love that idea. So did you just sit down, like, obviously it's been an evolution, of course, right? But they're the ones that create the goals. And then your job is just to like help guide them along that journey. But if, like, let's just say one of your boys came tomorrow and was like, hey man, hey dad, I'm not inspired by wrestling anymore. I want to go do this. Like, would you just flip the switch, be like, all right, let's do this together? Or do you think that would be a really difficult conversation?
No, I think if they had that conversation, whatever that thing is they want to transition to, let's talk about it, but let's try to be the best at that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Same thing with academics. Like 4.0 is the standard at my house, and my boys are capable of it. You know what I mean? So it's like, even if you don't want to wrestle, you're going to be one of the best students, and you're going to go get a great education. You know, so just having big dreams and big goals is kind of how we operate. You know, so it doesn't matter what it is. Even my daughter's 4 years old, or she's 5, but she's been playing tennis for a year. And I said, I want her, she has a private coach and it's freaking awesome. I love it. I said, I wanted her to do an individual sport. I didn't want her to wrestle, but I want to do an individual sport so that we can approach it like we do with wrestling, all the outside stuff that's within our control. We're going to do those things. And then she's been playing for a year, and we say it all the time, which we're crazy is our daughter's going to go pro at tennis by 16. You know what I mean? We just keep talking about it. And, you know, we ask her like, oh, you love tennis. She loves it. I was like, you're going to be champion? And she said, yeah. I was like, of what? She said, I'm going to be champion of the world. And it's like, we're instilling those passions and those dreams in them. And it's like, I don't know if I'm crazy about it, but it's like, man, I know that she's going to do it. I know that we're going to do everything that we can to do it.
Man, I love that. You already mentioned one thing, that you didn't want her to do wrestling. How different has it been coming from 3 sons to then having a daughter? I know it's like tough to explain. So I have a 2.5-year-old son, and then I have a 10-month daughter, and I can't put into words, but it's so different. It's so different. I don't know if you can explain it.
No. 100% it's different. And I love it. Like my daughter, she runs the house. You know what I mean? She bosses her brothers around. She's got a big personality, but she's a daredevil. She sees her brothers, training and tough, just doing.
Oh.
To her, it's normal to kind of follow suit and then train and some of that. And so she's going to learn that toughness. She's going to have that strong will. But at the same time, she's a princess. And man, she picks fights with my wife all the time. And my wife gets mad because I defend my daughter. And it's like, it's great. I think when I had my 3 boys and we got pregnant again, you know, I was like, man, I want my 4th boy. Like, this is my legacy. And then when we found out we had a daughter, and I was like, oh. But I wouldn't change it for the world. Like, having my daughter is freaking awesome.
Yeah, it rounds you out. It's a totally different impact. Why wouldn't you want your daughter? Just curious. Why wouldn't you want her to wrestle?
I want a break because I know how tough I know how tough I am with the boys. And if she does it, it's like, we're going to do it at the highest level. We're not going to just do it to, you know, just wrestle. It's like, oh, if you're going to wrestle, then we're going to try to make the Olympics, you know. And I know what it takes, and I do not want to have that relationship with my daughter. I want to be a dad, you know. Being a father coach is hard. It's a hard balance, you know what I mean? We're figuring out every single day. So I want to pay for her coaches. I want to be a supporter. I want to sit in the sidelines. But then also, as she gets older, hey, we're going to go lift weights. We're going to do the run. We're going to do the conditioning. We're going to do all the other stuff outside of it. But that's your time. Let us just be parents.
Yeah. I don't know what that would be like to be a parent and a coach. That'd be very difficult. You know, I play the role that you're talking about in particular for my son. I'm just a strength and conditioning guy. I'm on the sideline. I'm cheering, but I don't give any insight because I don't know much about the sports that he plays, right? I mean, I know a lot about it now, but I don't know technique. I'm not coaching him on any of this stuff, but it would be very difficult to be the coach and the parent because it takes a unique skill. So congratulations to you for being able to do it.
Yeah. And I've built I'm building my own training center in Clovis. I opened May 1st, and then I've built, we weren't sold on where we're going to stay, you know, and for high school, because I wanted my boys to be in the best environment. We were looking at other schools, but we decided to stay. So now I'm building the best environment around them. So I train a group of kids, 20 to 25. But it's like, if you're going to be in my program, you have to follow these rules, you know, these standards of operating, because I'm building a good group around my boys, you know what I mean, that also want to have the same goals and visions. And my boys get it, but they don't understand that everything that I'm doing is trying to set them up to be, you know, the best in the world. But yeah, it's been fun. We have an awesome group around them, and these kids are changing their lives, changing their mentality. They're maturing fast, you know what I mean? And it's just, tough love and discipline and just accountability. That's all, they're all good wrestlers, but just that accountability is kind of what we're missing right now.
Mm. Yeah, over here in the Bay Area in Los Gatos, we have a really great program. I think it's the Dragons with Greg.
Greg, yeah, awesome coach.
Yeah, he's an awesome guy. We went there for a while with my son, and then Los Gatos is a phenomenal program. So yeah, it's great surrounding. And as a dad, I'd encourage anybody out there, when you listen to the way Izzy talks, right, and if you align with those type of mindsets and skill sets, which we align with. Hard work, discipline, accountability. Having someone like you, it's such a blessing for a parent because it's another voice coming from another figure that can connect with I think you've made an impact on many, many people at the collegiate level, but I think even at this younger level in Clovis, it's so exciting for me to hear about that because these kids are so impressionable. I just think about all the stupid stuff I did when I was 14, 15, 16, 17. And if I had just had a little bit more structure, who knows what would have changed things. So congrats on all that work, man. I'm excited to follow along that journey.
No, I'm excited. You man, following your page too. When I open my new training center, I'm going to start a men's fitness ministry, where I meet with other dads, fathers, that just kind of want to have fellowship, but use fitness to kind of hold each other accountable and be better husbands, better men. So that's one of my visions, in the next, 6 months to start that. It's because of what you're doing as well. It kind of inspired me.
Well, let me know when it opens and I'll be there. Clovis isn't too far from me. So, it's just a drive.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. That'd be amazing.
Where is Clovis?
Fresno. Fresno is like a little town. Yeah, Fresno. Yeah, so I'm at the middle.
Couple hours away. Nothing crazy from me. Look, Izzy, I know that you're currently in Mexico City. You have an athlete, you're a UFC fighter. What coach are you? The overall, how does it work for a UFC fighter? Because I know they normally have like 4 coaches, right? Do you play a specific role or the overall role for him?
No, I'm the wrestling coach. We have our head coach. He's Saif Saud. He's out of Dallas. Brandon Moreno's based out of Las Vegas. So during fight camp, I'm flying over there every week, 3 days a week to work with his wrestling. But then 2 of his other coaches are Spanish speaking. So I'm kind of in the middle where our head coach doesn't speak Spanish. And then Brandon's coached English and Spanish. So I'm kind of the glue that kind of helps everything and keeps it all together. But no, I'm just one of the 4. But there's no I'm the head. It's like we all work together. We all have the common goal. Nobody has an ego, and we're all working just for the common task to get victory for our athlete.
Yeah. I'm hoping to see wrestling just thrive, especially with the growth of jiu-jitsu. I think that jiu-jitsu and wrestling, hopefully they're having a lot of they're about to have their day, I think, for the youth.
Yeah. No, wrestling is, one of the emerging sports, especially for women's sports. It's the largest growing women's sports in the country. So that's going to be big. And Iowa added Division I wrestling. So if you have daughters, wrestling is a great avenue for them. But wrestling is, with the technology and the flow wrestling and the different platforms, the sport is evolving every single day.
Mm.
Yeah, we had Amit Allure on the podcast recently.
Amazing.
Incredible athlete and such a incredible young woman for how young she is. Just the conversation we had, so insightful. She was so well spoken. It was a really, really nice conversation.
She's a great ambassador, and she's kind of going to carry the torch, for the next couple Olympic cycles for USA Wrestling. But yeah, she's amazing.
Dude, just listening to her, just her pure dominance. It seems like she came up in an environment similar to the way that it seemed like her mom was very much so encouragement of her, and she was just built different, hard work, dedication. And it sounds like that's exactly what's going on in your household. And it's inspiring for me. It's inspiring for me to always talk to guys like you because it just reminds me to stay on the path. And, I think one of the things that you were talking about is setting up our children today so that they're not here when they're 30, and if people have 30-year-old kids in their house, that's their decision. And who knows what happens in life? 100%, there's always unknowns, but my goal today should be giving them everything I can so that they can go off and live a very successful life. And that's the goal. And you really instilled that, I think, in your boys, and in particular, your oldest at West Point. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
For people who are, listening to you chat, like, dude, I want to know more about him. I want to follow on the journey. Where's the best place to go to? And then also with what you're doing from a business perspective, where's the best place to go?
I think just my Instagram, I post a lot of what I'm doing, family, traveling, and stuff like that. So my Instagram handle, I forget what it is. I think it's Israel Silva Wrestling or something like that. But that's kind of where I do a lot of my networking, and you can reach out to me and some of that. But, hopefully you guys, looked at my profile, and I'm so happy and grateful for my family and my kids. And it's kind of almost, I treat that as like a scrapbook. My Instagram is like things that we've done through the years, the different trips that we traveled, different things that we've accomplished. So that's kind of like what I try to do, with my social media, is just highlight, where we came from, what we're doing, and where we want to go.
We'll link it in the show notes. We have it. It's Israel_Silva. So we'll make sure we link it for sure.
And to kind of close this out, I'll use a proverb you had mentioned, which I think was just, I think for those of us that are, I've been trying to explore the Bible more. You brought up the Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. I thought that was really a powerful verse in the sense of like, raising the children up in a way that like they can be, they could have those same principles instilled in them in the future. So thank you for sharing that as well. I don't know if you wanted to kind of, that was one that you kind of hold true, right? That's like your proverb.
And my oldest son is a testament to it. You know what I mean? Like with everything, he goes to Bible studies, he goes to church on his own. Like he's still, seeking God and wanting to, walk next to God. So even like, man, I've taught my boys Olympic weightlifting since they were, 8, 9 years old, bar work. Now he still enjoys, he sends me videos of him hang cleaning and doing a workout and stuff like that. So he still enjoys that aspect of it. So all those different values that I've been, that he's seen and we've instilled in him, like he's still, walking that line with it. So, it's a testament. And to me, it's with my son, it's validation that we are on the right path. We are doing the right things because what he's doing, shows that we are living the right way. So I know that my younger boys and my daughter are going to, follow the same suit.
Absolutely. Well, for everybody listening, simple ask, as per usual, go back, check out all the episodes we have. We have solo episodes of Gabe and I, we have home team, we have guest episodes. Leave a podcast rating review, share with a friend. If you're listening to Izzy, you're like, dude, that's parenting advice 101. Boom, I'm going to send it out to 3 friends. And as always, keep training hard.